Good evening. You're watching ARIRANG News at 8. It's Tuesday, December 17th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo Ji-hye. We begin this evening in North Korea, where the country commemorated the second anniversary of former leader Kim Jong-il's death and marked the first day of Kim Jong-un's third year as the nation's leader. Well, this comes days after the shocking purges and executions of high-level officials. All eyes were on the seating arrangements at today's event, looking for clues about who will be the key players of the regime in the near future. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Han Da-eun has our top story.
It appears North Korea's military Politburo chief Choi Ryong-hae has replaced Chang Song-taek as the state's second most powerful man. As many had expected, the bureaucrat turned military official was seated right next to Kim Jong-un during a national ceremony marking the second anniversary of the death of former leader Kim Jong-il. Choi's seat was one seat closer to Kim Jong-un than he was at last year's ceremony, signaling his promotion. Speculation is also rife that Choi, who is known to be a hardliner in the military, was one of the main figures behind the expulsion and execution of Chang, who was a moderate. Next to Choi were Chief of the General Staff of the Korean People's Army Lee Young-gil and Minister of the People's Armed Forces Chang Jong-nam. To Kim Jong-un's right was Kim Yong-nam, the president of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly and the nominal second-in-command, who got the ceremony started with a keynote speech. Prime Minister Park Bong-joo, who's in charge of North Korea's economic reform plans, was seated next to him. Despite concerns that more Chang Song-taek followers will be purged, some of his close aides were present at the ceremony. But Kim Kyung-hee, Chang's wife and the daughter of the state founder Kim Il-sung, was absent, presumably for health reasons. Although Kim Jong-un's wife Lee Sol-ju was also absent from the ceremony, she made an appearance with Kim Jong-un at the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, where the bodies of North Korea's founder Kim Il-sung and his son Kim Jong-il lie in state. This was Lee's first public appearance since October. Han Da-eun, ARIRANG News.
And for an expert's take on what we can read into today's memorial ceremony for Kim Jong-il, we connect live to Dr. Kim Chol-woo, Senior Research Fellow at Korea Institute for Defense Analyses. Thank you for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, what was the most distinct feature of today's ceremony compared to last year's that you found noteworthy?
Against the backdrop of shocking execution of Chang Song-taek, everyone watches over what's the seating arrangement of the North Koreans' second ceremony for the disease. They passed away, Kim Jong-il. Obviously, the Choi Yong-hae's one click closer to Kim Jong-un is obvious, and he's the most popular man invisible at this point. But the important thing is not the seating arrangements. The thing is Kim Jong-un's decision-making style, decision-making, pattern is very significant at this moment. So we should be very critical on the how to develop our critical insights regarding all the development in North Korea, rather than North Korean propagandistic, pictures and the, live coverage. Is they even premeditating on the appearances of the seating arrangements and the Seoul's response and those neighboring countries' response. I think they thought about it. So. General public must be very aware of the insightful criticism rather than just seeing what new developments happening in North Korea.
Right. So, but nonetheless, all eyes were on who was seated next to Kim Jong-un so as to get a glimpse of the new power structure under the young dictator. So what did you make of what you saw?
I saw that Choi Yong-hae's and all the SNS rumors and through the grapevine and China and all the speculation in Seoul and around the world and make things unclear what's happening in North Korea. The thing is, Kim Jong-il would like to put the brakes on his so-called purging drive, because he might have received the report by the propaganda agitation department of the feedback of the older free country's response to the Chang Song-taek's, execution. I think he can take, some, speed control to maneuver to dodge off the international criticism, because although he intensified and solidified his centrifugal power, he is experiencing the so-called aftermath of the shocking execution. Because I can sense the Kim Jong-un's stone like a very frowning, rigid, appearances rather than, wide smiling opening, photos of they sent out a couple of days ago.
I see. Well, based on the pictures that we are seeing right now, we saw Lee Seol-ju appear on the state television, but we are not seeing Kim Kyung-hee, the wife of the deceased Chang Song-taek and sister to Kim Jong-il. What do you make of that?
That's wild speculation of the Kim Jong-un's health condition, but at this moment, the North Korean top authority figured it out. The Kim Jong-il's reappearance on the, seating arrangement will make things worse, because they reminded the Chang Song-taek's execution again. So Kim Jong-un regime would like to, put the past things go past the history. So they'd like to get out of this kind of spin out of control situation in North Korea. So whatever the condition of Kim Jong-il's health condition, for the time being, and Kim Jong-il would not appear on the stage, because her appearance on the stage will limelight on Kim Jong-il, will take what attention from North Korea. Interestingly, for the last 2.5 years, on and off, Kim Jong-un always on the main character rather than supporting actors. So it's very interesting. So Kim Jong-il's disappearance is obvious. That's the intended propaganda maneuver, I think.
All right, Dr. Kim, before we let you go, Kim Jong-un has apparently been trying to demonstrate his firm grip on power following the shocking execution of his uncle Chang Song-taek. So what can we expect from his third year in power? Can we expect any positive changes?
Yes, the economic sense or the gesturing in the providing or initiating new suggestions, initiating new proposals. But military speaking, they'd like to likely to have a very diversionary, blackmailing or the diversionary provocations toward South Korea is very likely for the coming future. So, like Park Geun-hye, President Park Geun-hye urges readiness against possible North Korea provocations. Any provocations between North and South Korea will make things worse. So, and we have to be fully ready for that possible provocations from North Korea. On top of that, Kaesong Industrial Complex will go as usual. So there is no big surprise in a couple of months, but the coming springtime, like Minister Kim Kwon-jin mentioned, we have to keep an eye on what's going on in North Korea and fully prepare for the spring season.
All right, vigilance, that sounds like a good plan. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim Chol-woo, Senior Research Fellow at Korea Institute for Defense Analyses. Now, meanwhile, back here in the South, Seoul's Defense Minister Kim Kwon-jin has ordered the South Korean military to be on full alert against any possible provocations from North Korea. During a meeting with the nation's military commanders on Tuesday, Kim said there is a high chance of North Korean provocation during the period between late January to early March next year. In a separate development, Saenuri Party lawmaker Cho Won-jin said in a special parliamentary meeting Tuesday that the North is showing signs it could attempt another long-range missile launch and a fourth nuclear test, citing signs of expansion in its nuclear test site and missile launch facility. In the second of a three-part series on the third-generation dictator Kim Jong-un, who was called into power 2 years ago, we look at how far the country's economic reforms have come under his reign and where they are headed. Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
When the young North Korean leader Kim Jong-un assumed power 2 years ago, he made a bold statement to move toward economic reform.
There must be economic development for Kim Jong-un to receive more support from the North Korean public. In that sense, North Korea is attempting economic development that it can achieve by itself, despite all the international sanctions.
One way to do that was to establish 14 special economic zones across 9 regions in the state, opening up the reclusive regime to foreign investors. But because the now executed uncle of the young Kim, Chang Song-taek, was a key player in the plan along with North Korean Premier Park Bong-joo, experts say Chang's removal may put the brakes on the drive to reform.
Park Bong-joo lost his big partner in the North Korean politics. That means probably the hardliners in Korean Workers' Party and North Korean military authorities, they will raise their pressure against new economic reform and any kind of open-up policy.
Another ambitious project to rake in foreign currency is the construction of the Basingnyeong ski resort, which is estimated to have cost the ailing state $400 million. The park is expected to open for business by the end of this year, but experts are skeptical about Pyongyang's ability to open up due to its constant provocations and nuclear threats.
Such efforts to open up must be backed by an easing of international sanctions and an improvement in North Korea's image to the outside world. It is foolish of the North to think that it can attract foreigners just by building tourist sites.
The recent detainments of American tourists will also work against the North's attempts to attract foreigner tourism. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Touch base with journalists, experts, and analysts who are taking the pulse of Asia's heartbeat.
South Korea's defense minister.
In a lively half hour, join ARIRANG's Yoo Ji-hye for the day's top stories, current affairs, business, technology trends, plus global weather forecasts and more. ARIRANG News. Every weeknight, live on ARIRANG TV.
Entrepreneurship, that's what President Park Geun-hye would like to see more of from the nation's largest companies when they make investments. And she told them as much on Tuesday in a face-to-face meeting. She also emphasized the importance of creating a new business environment in which large enterprises and SMEs can prosper together. Our presidential office correspondent, Oh Jun-joo, reports.
Economic revitalization and job creation were two of President Park's key goals for the latter half of this year. What has become important now is keeping the domestic economy on the track to recovery. President Park on Tuesday attended a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new headquarters of the Federation of Korean Industries, where she met with top business leaders and encouraged them to continue with efforts to boost the economy. The president pledged to actively support bold investment decisions by the nation's conglomerates that are based on entrepreneurship. She said that preemptive investments made during hard times were what enabled Korea to overcome various crises in the past and helped it to create new opportunities. President Park said if economic recovery is the short-term goal, enhancing the fundamentals of the Korean economy is the long-term one. She then urged these companies to take the lead in realizing a creative economy, highlighting just how important a shift in the nation's economic paradigm is. The president also put great emphasis on shared growth between large and small companies. How? She called for a new business ecosystem, one that combines the resources and experiences of large enterprises and the new ideas and creativity of SMEs. For example, President Park suggested that conglomerates give away patents they don't use to smaller firms and seek technological cooperation with them. The president also called on large enterprises to look beyond the domestic market and focus on the world as a whole, as there are a variety of sectors in which to cooperate with SMEs. Oh Jun-joo, ARIRANG News.
And moving now to the nation's railway strike that has entered day 9 on this Tuesday. The police and the prosecution are stepping up efforts to rein in the nationwide protest. The Prosecutor General Kim Yongjoo said Tuesday that the strike is clearly illegal and that authorities will follow the letter of the law in dealing with thousands of union workers who have walked off the job since last Monday. Police raided the offices of the Korea Railroad Corporation's labor union in Seoul, taking away documents and computer hard drives. Yet there is little sign that the protest will end anytime soon, as the Union of Seoul Metro, which operates subway lines 1 through 4 in the capital, are set to join in the strike starting Wednesday morning. The nation's defense ministry, meanwhile, will dispatch 300 military personnel with appropriate experience to fill in for the striking workers. And for more on the ongoing railway strike, which looks set to drag on, we go one-on-one with Dr. Kim Yongjoo, head of KLMP Consulting and a longtime commentator here on ARIRANG News. Now, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Right, so turning back time to 9 days ago, the strike was triggered by suspicion that the government is seeking to privatize the network. Can you walk us through the issue of contention?
Right, the debate is centering on this word privatization. And that's because the Korail, the company itself, is trying to set up a subsidiary company that will offer KTX, the high-speed train service that will cover the southeastern side of Seoul City. Currently, the high-speed train KTX runs from the northern central part of the city through the southwestern side. And now what Korail wants to do is, because southeastern side is more populous and perhaps a relatively more prosperous area, there will be more passengers. So they want to set up this new high-speed train service from there. And they want to have that service provided by this separate subsidiary company. And that's where all the debate starts. The union is saying setting up this separate subsidiary company means it's a first step of privatizing the railway system. And the government said it's not the case. And the union is saying, look, what the Korail is saying is they are going to divide the share of this company to 41% going to Korail's control, and then the rest, 59%, going to the public funds. But they said that's not going to happen, and probably they will not work out. And so they're saying we are heading towards the privatization of the railroad, and they're saying we have to go on strike unless Korail actually withdraws its plan for setting up this company. By the way, last week, Korail's board of executives actually voted for setting up the company itself, and the land ministry itself, Land and Transportation Ministry, is issuing the license for that company. So that process is moving fast ahead, while the union is saying they're not going to stop their strike unless that process itself is stopped.
I see. Well, so let me get this straight. The Korail and government is saying that the new subsidiary is aimed at boosting competitiveness and reducing the burden of the debt-ridden company.
Right.
But why is there a reason to believe that this is a lie?
Well, the union is saying the following. They say the 59% that are supposed to, 59% of the share of this new subsidiary company that are supposed to go to the public funds, the funds will not be interested in investing in this company. Therefore, at the end, the Korail will change its mind or change its words, saying we'll have to sell these remaining shares to the private investors. That's the way it's going to go. That's union's argument. Second argument from the union is that actually, even though Korail is saying that they'll specify the prevention of privatization by barring the private investors in their article of incorporation, union is saying that it's going to be illegal. In Korea, according to Korean law, setting such kind of restrictions and barring certain kinds of investors through the article of incorporation itself is illegal thing to do. So they're saying what Korail is saying it's going to do itself is going to be illegal, and it will be inevitable for Korail to accept private investors. That's union's argument.
In the span of 9 days, the strike has spiraled out of control. It seems that two sides are not showing any signs of compromise. So Korail insists there's no compromise unless the union workers wrap up and end their strike. What do you think about their hardline stance? Do you see this as a mistake?
I think a lot of mistakes are being made on the side of Korail and the government itself. Every day we're hearing these numbers, 8,500 Korail workers being relieved of their duty. Sometimes they say 8,500, sometimes say 7,900. We're not sure what the exact number is. And Korea has pressed charges for 190 of the leaders of the union itself, and prosecutors have already issued arrest warrants for like 10 of them so far. And the way it's run, the thing is, when we say in Korean expression, being relieved of duties, there is no real difference in the minds of public between that and then firing. So a lot of most of the public takes this as 8,500 people being fired. This heads of the households, fathers losing their jobs, going back home without any being unemployed. And that is exactly that's not exactly accurate picture here. When you're relieved of the duty, what happens is for the next 3 months you'll get paid about 70% of your pay, and after 3 months you'll get paid 50% of your pay. But you're not fired. But in terms of public communication, government is doing a terrible job in not explaining what this being relieved of the duty itself is, and then by having the public prosecutor going all the way saying there will be no exception and all that, I think it's a little bit premature. I think the smart way of dealing with this issue is let the public suffer a little bit and let the public decide in terms of which side they support. According to some of the polls, I don't want to mention specific numbers, but according to some of the polls, public seems to believe that government seems to be a little bit harsh on this. So no matter what the fact is, no matter what the details is, I don't think the government and the Korea itself is managing this issue itself wisely so far.
You mentioned suffering commuters, and they are indeed suffering.
Right.
The public seems to be displeased with the union also for handling and going ahead with this demonstration. What's your take on that?
Well, the union side has made a lot of mistakes as well. First of all, the public from the beginning has been wondering, okay, they're talking about privatization, but government is saying it's not going to happen. So they're talking about something that will not happen in the future. So what is the point, first of all? So the union side has not made a very good job in terms of communicating their agenda there, and the public is getting to know there are hidden agendas behind this. That is, the union wants about 6.7% wage increase, where in Korea, all these public corporations have accumulated so much debt, and Korea has been actually enjoying like about 5% on average for the past several years of wage increase so far. So they want even more. Public does not like that. And also, public understands that behind this agenda of privatization, what union is really concerned about is, seeing their power weakened when companies separate into two, their membership will be lost. So that's their key concern. So public understands that the union is not really telling them the truth, just like as much as the government and the Korea is not dealing with the facts rightly. So the public itself is kind of getting really tired of the whole situation, but I'm sure the sense of tiredness will further increase as we suffer more because of the the reduced subway services and train services.
So you're speculating this conflict to go on for a while?
I think so.
Okay. All right, Dr. Kim Yongjoo, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Now, in other news, General Motors is winding down its unprofitable international operations, announcing plans to withdraw production in Australia and drop in Chevrolet brand in Europe. It's left many wondering how much Korea, which has established itself as one of GM's main production hubs, will be affected by the global restructuring. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The sustained strength of the Aussie dollar against almost all major trading currencies, the relatively high cost of production, and the relatively small scale of the local domestic market.
Those are the reasons cited by General Motors last week for ending its manufacturing operation in Australia by 2017. The worry is Korea faces the same negative factors in a milder form. For now, Korea accounts for about 1/10 of GM's global auto output and is responsible for developing its small cars, including the Spark. Industry analysts say, however, the recent GM move is a wake-up call for Korea, as the country is not an exception for GM's global restructuring.
Considering Korea's strong local currency, high cost, and relatively small domestic market, GM Korea's labor union and suppliers must spur on their efforts to improve productivity.
Already, GM Korea was hit by the U.S. automaker's decision late last year to scale back on the Korean production of its compact car Cruise in the future. Korea is currently a major production base for Cruise, but the compact model won't be built here when GM introduces its next generation model. On top of that, GM's announcement this month to phase out sales of Chevrolet vehicles in Europe by 2016 was a major blow to the Korean unit. That's because GM Korea produces about 90% of the Chevy automobiles sold in Europe, or as much as a fifth of its total output. In the short term, Korea will remain as the U.S. auto giant's main production and development center for small cars, but its future will depend on its productivity and price competitiveness. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
On to weather now. Some parts of the nation are seeing sprinkles and even some snow right now. For details, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, how are things looking nationwide?
Well, Ji-hye, a heavy snowfall watch has been issued on the mountains in Gangwon-do province and Jeju, not to mention that a winter weather advisory is in effect throughout Gangwon-do and some parts of Gyeongsang-pukdo province. Taking a look at the current conditions, well, as you can see, it is cloudy across the map and it's sprinkling in the southern regions due to a low pressure trough. So it looks like the east coast regions will be the most affected by the snow. The mountains in Gangwon-do will get to see over 25 centimeters of snow, whereas the mountains in Jeju are forecast to get about 15 centimeters. Other than that, Gyeongsang-pukdo province will see anywhere between 3 to 8 centimeters. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul's morning low should remain the coldest at -3 degrees with a high of 5. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju hit 7. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon and Jeju reach 6 and 9 degrees respectively. Meanwhile, Mount Kumgang peaks at -6. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, and back to you, Ji-hye.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's our broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates on our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.